Alright, drafters, here today with a pre-release and draft primer for Kamigawa and the Iron Dynasty. It's a set which is looking really, really fun. I know some of the themes are split opinions, but I think most people do seem to be looking at it positively, and I think it looks fun, but there's a lot going on in this set, more than you might notice at first, so I think it's really useful to go through something like this. I'm going to go through some mechanics. I'm also going to go through the archetypes and what to look out for in these archetypes, but take quite a high-level look at what's going on, and see if we can just get my head around these things to make sure we're ready for these pre-releases and these first drafts on Arena and things like that, so we can, have a good, smooth start to the format. First mechanic I want to talk about is Reconfigure. So Reconfigure is where you have a creature which can also be an equipment. When it's a creature, it's got its power toughness, it's got its abilities like normal, and you can pay this Reconfigure cost to turn it into equipment which equips onto another creature. Kind of Transformer style. I always have that kind of idea in my head when you're thinking about it reconfiguring into an equipment instead. And what this means is it'll be the equipment. It will usually have stats similar to its own, which adds to the creature it's equipping to, and the abilities will be comparable as well. But it means that if the creature dies, either through point removal, so just a single target removal on the creature, or through something like a board wipe, which would destroy all creatures, then the reconfigured creature falls off and becomes a creature again. And you can also pay its reconfigure cost as well, so you could attack with the equipped creature and then pay reconfigure to pull it off, and then you've got an untapped blocker. So that's another way you could use it, but it means that it's a different way to look at these equipment. Okay, maybe the equipment's a bit more susceptible to removal because it's a creature for a lot of the time, apart from when it's equipped to another creature. But I think it's an interesting way to look at these equipments, and it's one of these mechanics that we're really going to have to play with to see how it works. But it does seem quite good. It's a way to kind of go Voltron on a single creature without losing everything. So, if you equip everything up onto one creature, that creature dies. Well, if you've got two of these equipments which are creatures as well, then that creature dies, but you get two more creatures, probably smaller, but still, that's quite good. Another mechanic I want to talk about is a returning mechanic, which I haven't seen properly in a while, and this is vehicles. So vehicles work by, you've got a crew cost. It's usually crew 2 or something like that. Here you got crew 3. And to crew, you need to tap creatures with this total power of equal to the crew cost. Just about got that out there. So here you got crew 3. And if you try to tap just a single 2 power creature here, then it won't work. That doesn't work to crew. You need to use at least the right power. So here, if you tap both of these creatures, it's a crew cost of 3, you tap 3 power, and then the vehicle can attack. The vehicle would be affected by summoning sickness, but you can tap creatures which are just entering the battlefield to crew the vehicle, so that's quite good. It's also worth noting, and this might come up time to time, that if you have more creatures than you need, and more power that you need, you can tap all of these, you can overcrew, even though you can't undercrew, and then the vehicle will become a creature again. So that's another little thing to think about with vehicles that you might not realise. Also with vehicles, you need to crew it before you attack, so you usually probably want to do it in main 1, but you can do it at the start of combat. And if you're blocking, you can wait until the attackers have actually attacked in. You can crew your vehicles in response to see what they're going to be attacking with, and then you can do your blocks after that. So that's a couple of little strategy things that can work with crewing vehicles and making sure that you can going to get the most out of them, and you're not going to be led to having a bad time where you go to combat, you forget to crew, and then you can't attack with the vehicle. So useful to know. This next little section is a little bit on the themes of the set, but it does tie in with some mechanics. And what you've got is, if you look at some of the theory behind the design and things like that, what they said is, on one side of you got modern things, and the other side you got this kind of traditional Japanese culture thing. And this whole set's a bit of a mishmash between the two. So they've done this with the colour pie a little bit, and blue is really on the modern side of the spectrum of this, and then green is on the more on the traditional side of the spectrum. So you've got this full spectrum with the different colours in between. Red slightly more on the modern than the traditional, white's the other way around, and then black is somewhere in the middle. And that's represented by the artifact things being the modern type side of things, and the enchantment things being the traditional things. I think it's blessed, so it's enchanted, and that's how that's working, whereas the artifacts are things that people have made, it's a technology. And then when you got the black stuff, black is the colour which cares most. I think there is a little bit in white as well, but it's a colour which cares most about having artifacts and enchantments. Now, there are blue enchantments in this set. There are green equipment and green artifacts in this set, so it's not a hard and fast rule, but that is the way it's going down. And you're going to have a lot of artifacts and a lot of equipment matters, a lot of artifact and a lot of enchantment matter stuff in this set. So I think that's something to look out for, and I think it does tell you a little bit about what's going on. We've also got another unusual mechanic which we haven't really seen before, and this is when we're talking about creatures which have been modified. So modified means it can have a counter on it, it can have an aura on it, it can be equipped, And when it says counter, that doesn't just mean +1/+1 counters. That there are a few times where you can get ability counters, like we saw in Ikoria. So you can see here, this creature gets a Ninja Turtle, but it gets a Death Touch counter. So that is another way that you can modify a creature. And, you know, that's just worth bearing in mind and seeing how these things are going to work. Modified, it looks quite easy to pull off. There's a lot of ways to do it. There's a lot of ways to give things counters. We've already talked about the Reconfigure equipments. There's normal equipments as well. I haven't seen a huge amount of auras, but they will be there as well. So they're all quite useful things to know about. Final mechanic I want to talk about is, well, final two mechanics. First of all, we've got Channel. So Channel is an ability which exists on the card when it's in your hand. And what you can do is you can pay the channel cost, you can discard the card, and it'll do this ability. Now that isn't casting a spell, so it can't be countered by traditional means, and that's something really important to point out. Counter spells are potentially going to be a little bit worse this set because of this Channel ability, and this can usually be done at instant speed as well, so that's really, really important to know. Another one, we've got Return mechanic in Sagas. So Sagas works slightly differently this time around. It's another way to get enchantments, by the way. But you have the final mode on each of these Sagas. When it happens, the card gets exiled, and it comes back as the other side, which is always going to be a creature. And the reason why it exiles, it's done this before with the Planeswalkers and Magic Origins and things like that, the Flip Walkers, and it just means that if they've got any counters or something on them, those counters leave it, and then they come back, and it comes back as a fresh thing. So it's just a good rules thing to go alongside this. If you've been watching a little while, then you know what might be coming next. I'm going to put a code on the screen. This is for Crimson Vow 6-pack, so if you've not put a pre-release code in for Crimson Vow, feel free to use this. Yes, there's only one there. I don't have an unlimited supply of codes, but I do like to give out the spares that I have to my viewers to thank you for everybody who's watching. You know, obviously, I can say the YouTube stuff, subscribe, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Really, really helps out. I'm at 238 subscribers at the minute. I'm really wanting to get to 250 by the end of the week, really, and I think that would be a nice target, and up to 1,000 by the end of the year. That would be a fantastic goal if I can get to, and if you can help me get that way, that's really appreciated. You can also share it among your friends. Say, oh, I've watched this really good video. Guy seems really cool. Help them out, give them a watch, and just see how it goes. But these pre-release videos always do quite well, and I'm just, you know, really, really appreciative that people do come and watch, and I get videos with more than 1,000 views. It really, really means a lot, and I appreciate every single one of you. Moving on to the archetypes, though. So I'm going to go through the different colour pairs. I'm going to show you the archetype uncommon, so the multicolour uncommon for each of the signposts. That's the word I was looking for. The signpost uncommon for each of the archetypes, and talk a little bit about what's going on. I'm going to start with green-black. So here we've got Gloom Shrieker, and it's an interesting card. I think this could be a common in certain sets. I don't think it's particularly powerful. It's doing a green-black thing. I'm not really getting where green-black's going in this set. There does seem to be this kind of graveyard, just grindy-based synergy, which works. But I think, yet again, green-black's had a bit of the short end of the stick. We've got a few things that interact with the graveyard. We've got a few things that care about sacrificing things. But there doesn't really seem to be a big theme going through it. It's just green-black value. That's fine. It would be nice to see a green-black archetype which is doing a bit more than this value thing. I suppose we just had the Butts Matter stuff in the last set, but that was difficult to get going, although it was quite fun to play. But I would like to see like a nice, solid counters package for green-black in a set in future. But right now, this is what we've got, and it's worth knowing about. I think the Gloomstreak is still a solid card. You know, you can buy things back. It's a 3-mana 2/1 menace. Okay, whatever. It's an enchantment creature though, so that's going to matter for some things. But I don't think there's really a lot going on here. I'll draft it sometimes, I'm sure, but I won't be really happy that I'm getting this thing going off with green-black. Blue-red's an archetype I'm a lot more interested in drafting though. I think it seems really sweet. The Signpost Uncommon is a 2-mana 2/2 flyer, which makes all your artifacts cost 1 less. And you see a lot more artifact synergy in this set, in these pairs. We've already talked about how blue and red are more on the modern day technology side of things and caring about artifacts, but you got Reality Heist here, which also cares about artifacts. You got a lot of the equipment things which are going on in this set. These equipments which are creatures as well, and I think that, you know, it's just a lot of things going on with artifacts. It's worth noting as well in this set there seems to be a higher number than normal of colourless artifacts. So you can see here you got Circuit Mender, which is going to be a really sweet one if you can get it down for 1 mana. Amazing, gains your life. When it dies, you draw cards, and it does these other things. I'll include some more stuff about the colourless artifacts later on. I've just picked a few out which look kind of cool. So after do all the archetypes, I'll go into these a little bit more. Green-white is on the other side of things, and it works pretty much the same. It's a 2-mana 2/2 lifelink. Lifelink's probably not as good as the flying, but it's still quite good. And it makes the enchantments cost 1 less. Again, green-white, there's a lot of enchantments going on. It's like I say, it's the other side of the spectrum to red-blue. So you've got a lot of things that care about enchantments. You've got this samurai here, which is a lot cheaper if you have lots of enchantments out. If you have the naturalist out, then it's going to cost 2 less straight away because it costs 1 less because the naturalist is an enchantment. It costs 1 less because costs the naturalist makes it cost 1 less by itself. So I think this is a really sweet way to go about it. I'm looking forward to drafting this one as well. I think, these enchantment matters or card type matters stuff are quite fun. And we've got artifacts and enchantments in this set. We've not seen that before. And I think that's going to be pretty sweet to play. Blue-black is a fan favourite return mechanic coming from the original Kamigawa and Modern Horizons 1. It is ninjutsu. And this is something that you usually see on ninjas. I think it only appears on ninjas as far as I'm aware. And it means that if you attack with a creature and it's unblocked, then you can ninjutsu in the card for its ninjutsu cost. Usually it's going to be a cheaper cost and you're going to get a creature at a good rate, but you can put it in, it's attacking instead, you return the original creature to your hand, this replaces it, and then that'll get in for attack. Often there'll be an ability which triggers if it hits the opponent or something like that. To get this to work, you do need some unblockable creatures. That helps a lot, and I think the best one here is going to be this Infiltrator. 2 mana, 1/2 fly, which you can pump in the late game. It seems amazing. You can play turn 2, attack with a turn 3, get a ninja in instead of it, and then you can play it later on quite easily, and that seems pretty good. There's also a whole host of ninjas as well, which have this ninja 2 ability. Red-white is a weird one, and it's a samurai mechanic. We don't have Bushido coming back, but we do have this kind of attacking alone idea. So it's this captain is, I think it's going to be quite difficult to get off this, if I'm totally honest. I could be proved totally wrong, but the idea of only attacking with one creature for some small benefits, and they do generally seem to be quite small benefits, doesn't really appeal to us. But there's some creatures which work around it, and I think it is still quite a smashy face archetype, which is going to do some quite good stuff. You can see another couple of cards here which are caring about attacking alone or can attack alone themselves and stuff like this. I suppose you can always make favourable trades every time you're attacking, because each of these creatures is going to get the buffs from each other. But to be honest, I can see this failing. It could work really well. I'll have to try it. I will happily try it, but we'll have to wait and see how this one goes. White-black cares about both artifacts and enchantments, and you can see here from the legendary creature that we'll have in front of us that it cares about artifacts and enchantments. I think this isn't going to be the most difficult thing in the world to get to work. Most of the things that care about artifacts and enchantments are in black, but we do have this one in white that I found as well. But there is no card that I can find which makes both an artifact and an enchantment on a single card. So you're going to have to do a little bit of work to get there. That said, it's not going to be impossible by any means. There's lots of enchantments, there's lots of artifacts, especially in black, and quite a few in white as well. So it's going to be definitely doable. I think it's going to be one of those decks which comes together a little bit less often, but you've probably just got a solid suite of things in black and white as well. So it might just be that you'll have these cards which sometimes you'll just play it as a black-white mid-range deck, sometimes you'll play it as a black-white enchantments and artifacts deck where you want to get all these triggers, and it'll depend how the draft goes or how the pre-release goes and which cards you open. Blue-white is the colour pair which cares most about vehicles. So blue-white, you've got a lot of these pilots in white. So often, but not always, the pilots can crew as though the power is 2 greater. So it's quite easy to crew things. They're not great creatures by themselves, but they can crew really well. That doesn't always apply. You've got a 1 mana 2/1 here, which can crew 4 by itself, which is pretty amazing. It's also an artifact creature by itself. They do seem to care about artifacts a lot in blue-white. Cares about vehicles. There's a few blue cards which can make vehicles attack by themselves without needing to crew them, kind of. But I think this is going to be where you're going to be playing a lot of your vehicles. Vehicles will go in everywhere in different ways, but I think blue-white is probably where they're going to end up being for the most part. Red-black's an interesting one. I don't know how good it's going to be. It could be really good. It could just have a really good red-black mid-range pile, which has some of these effects. But what it cares about is artifacts going to the graveyard and sacrificing artifacts. So the signpost uncommon here is Oni Cult Anvil, and you can tap it to sacrifice an artifact, and you'll drain the opponent for 1. And also, whenever an artifact goes to the graveyard once a turn, you get a 1/1 construct creature token as well, artifact construct creature token. So I think that is, it's quite a good value engine. I think you can do some cool things. You could leave a blocker for a lot of the time, sacrifice the blocker, drain the opponent for 1, you get another blocker for next turn. I think that's something that can happen. If also there's lots of things which care about sacrificing artifacts on your turn. So what you could do is you could have this out, you could have something where you want to sacrifice it anyway, you can sacrifice it, you'll get a 1/1. On your turn, they'll attack in, you can sacrifice the 1/1, you can do the drain thing, and there's a few different things you can do. There's also things which care about sacrificing artifacts. You can sacrifice artifacts to pay for other spells, so that's quite useful as well. And I'll have to, again, wait and see on this one. Black and red do both have some good removal. Black's removal seems excellent, actually, to be honest. There's some really, really strong removal spells in there. And, you might just be able to get there to mid-range them out and have some of these effects going on alongside whatever else you're doing. Red-green is another tough one. When I first looked at red-green, I really couldn't see what the theme was. And apparently when I looked into it, it cares about modified creatures. And I can kind of see that. But to be honest, I think it's just big, smashy lads smashing the opponent and doing some damage. There seems to be a little bit of an enchantment thing going on, so you can put counters on things with enchantments, and that's probably coming from the green side. Obviously, you've got the signpost in common here as well, which can put counters on things, give them haste. Yes, okay, that's modifying it, but it's also just making them bigger, making them smashing faster. The uncommon here is effectively Rhythm of the Wild that we saw in Ravnica Allegiance, if you've seen that before, which is quite a good card, actually, I think, if I remember rightly. But, this makes an enchantment get on the battlefield. You got enchantment creatures, you got artifact creatures, you got the equipments. So modified does work, but I wouldn't really go too far down the line of, I've got to have all the modified creatures, got to have all the payoffs. You just want big things that are going to get in, going to smash the opponent with some removal spells thrown in. And I think that the modified benefits will just come up as an offshoot of that. Blue-green, which is our last archetype, is quite a cool one, and it seems to be focused on this channel ability. So the showcase uncommon is this big creature, and it has the 2 channel abilities, which I don't think has ever happened before. Usually you only get 1 channel ability. And what it means is you can have this in your hand, you can use one of the channel abilities earlier in the game if you want, or if you manage to get the late game, you can cast the big creature. And you can see this on other things as well. I've been told it's kind of a ramp archetype, and there's a couple of ramp cards, but no more than any normal set, to be honest, in the green side of things. I think it's just that you've got these cards which can go early and go late, and that's quite good to have this modal effect on things. You've got the crab here. Now the crab, worth pointing out, it counters target ability as well, so you can actually counter channel effects with this as well, so that's something to bear in mind. I'll talk a little bit more about counter spells in a moment. But I think it's just semi-ramps, again, kind of on the bigger end of mid-range, kind of 4 to 6 mana cost spells is what you'll be looking at. Maybe it's a little bit higher than that. But then you can use these channel abilities to make them relevant in the game. I would say if you're playing this, don't worry about using these, because it's kind of as the 3 mana, 2 mana, 4 mana channel abilities, because that is kind of their intention. Yes, okay, there might be slightly subpar spells, but they can't be countered for a start, and it just means that you can interact in the early game with these big spells that you can also cast in the late game. Did say I was going to look at some artifacts. You've got a few on here. You've got some nice big creatures doing big creature things. You've got some good value engines. These will fit in their own archetypes. I just thought to highlight some of the cool artifact creatures and just generic artifacts that we've got in the set that I haven't talked about in any of the coloured archetypes. There's a lot of coloured artifacts in the set, but there are there's a good dozen or more non-coloured artifacts as well, which are worth looking at. Have a look through the cards. You've got some things at both ends of the spectrum, small things which are doing these little services to the deck and just kind of helping out the deck do its thing, to the big kind of game ending artifact as well. They're all worth looking at. Counter spells, there's 4 counter spells that I can see. You've got quite a selection actually. You've got Essence Capture here, which is a counter. It's a slightly improved, harder to cast Essence Scatter, but you get to put a counter on something. It'll matter for modified creatures, that one as well. I think that's why it's been included. You have basically a counter spell, so you can cast blue and tap an artifact to counter anything, or you can use it as a cancel, so blue and 1 to just counter anything as well. That's worth looking out for. We've already talked about the crab. That's got the ability where you can counter spells or abilities if they don't pay 3, and the abilities is going to be quite key here. As I said, I don't think counter spells are going to be as good because of the channel abilities and stuff like that. That's something to look out for. But the crab will be able to help you counter those channel abilities, which will definitely be useful at some points. And then finally, we've got Spell Pierce, counter target non-creature spell unless its opponent pays 2 for a single blue. There's going to be cool, maybe slightly more than normal non-creature spells. Remember, vehicles aren't creature spells, so it's going to affect vehicles when they're getting cast. They will become creatures when you crew them, but when you cast them, it isn't a creature. So that's going to be probably most useful and probably included because we've got this vehicle thing going on. Looking at instant speed tricks, I've picked out all the 1-mana ones here. There is a bit of a caveat to this as well, which I'll go into in a moment. But there's some quite strong ones here. You're Already Dead is, I think, just basically a strict upgrade on Blade Brand, which was already a playable card. It only costs 1 mana. It doesn't have to give you creature death touch. You can use a burn spell and then use this. I think it just seems really, really strong. Potentially pauper implications as well. And I think, you draw a card from it as well, and it's just a really solid spell. If your opponent's making some questionable attacks, then just bear in mind that they might have this for 1 black mana. Another good thing, which I didn't mention at the start, is I think it's important when you're playing on Arena to know about these 1 mana spells as well, because often if they've only got 1 mana, you can kind of predict which one of these spells are going to get. We do have some X spells, which I'm talking about in a second, which do complicate this a little bit, but these are all the pure 1 mana instant speed spells that you can get. You've got some good tricks in white. You've got protection spell in green. You've got a baby Sure Strike in red as well as a little damage spell. So these are all things that your opponent could have if they've got that 1 mana left open, and it's putting the stops on the different sections of the game as well. I did say there were some caveats. So you've got these X spells. There's the cycle of the marches. So these are all rare spells. And then you've also got the Flame Discharge, which is a red and X spell as well. So they could have these cards instead. It's worth pointing out that, but it's just something to bear in mind as you're going along. Next, I'm going to talk about the boogeyman of the format, and it actually, when I was looking through, usually you can pick out a couple of really, really strong spells, and there's definitely some there. I think all of the Mythic Dragons are going to be quite annoying if your opponent plays them, because if you remove them, they still get the cool effect on them as well. But I think one card does stand out a little bit to the rest, is going to be the card which you're going to get caught out by so many times, and it's the Wandering Emperor. This is a Planeswalker with Flash, and when it enters the battlefield, if it just entered the battlefield, then you can use one of the loyalty abilities to that turn on your opponent's turn. So you attack into this, your opponent can cast it, they can make a 2/2 to block with, they won't be attacking the Wandering Emperor, and then they'll have got to play Planeswalker for the next turn. And you don't know what they're going to have when you're attacking in. So I think this is going to be really, really annoying. I don't think it's on Toxrill or any level of the huge bombs from Crimson Vow, but I think it's going to be really strong to see. And I do think it's possibly going to be the strongest card in the format, but I could really be wrong. It could definitely be one of those dragons instead. Anyway, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. It's really, really appreciated. I hope that you've gotten something from this. Hope you're going to enjoy playing it. I do have my achievement list coming out. I should get it out before the release on Arena this time. I'm hoping to get it out early next week. And that's where I'll be going through the draft set and looking at what I would like to get going on. You've got to build a Megazord. That's going to be a sweet one to do as well. But if you want to, you can follow on Twitter at PLD_MTG. But obviously, I think I would just prefer the subscribes, to be honest. But I do tweet from time to time about some cool limited stuff. So I hope to see you there. Thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.